Hi, topic of today's video is how to use OpenID Connect identity tokens to authenticate CircleCI jobs with Azure. What is OpenID Connect? It's a protocol that allows a user to authenticate with a third-party services by using a set of credentials from a different service. This allows user to use a single set of credentials to access multiple services, which can be more convenient and easier to manage than maintaining multiple sets of credentials. What are some benefits of using OIDC for users? For example, single sign-on. Then OIDC allows users to use a single set of credentials to access multiple services, which can improve the user experience by reducing the number of times a user needs to enter their login information. It improves security, in simplified account management, since users only need to manage a single set of credentials, which enhances privacy, and great flexibility, because users can authenticate with a variety of different services, which can give them the flexibility in how they access and use those services. So why use OpenID Connect in CI/CD? We do not have to store long-lived credentials as secrets in our CI/CD tools. We do not have to rotate credentials since they are no longer static. We have more granular control over how workflows can use credentials. And we follow the best practices in terms of authentication and authorization. Here's the overview, how this process looks like. First, we'll create the application in Azure and the service principal. Then we'll start the job with a context. And then CircleCI with authenticate with Azure using OIDC token. As prerequisites, we'll need access to Azure subscription with the owner access level. We will need access to Azure Active Directory tenant with this application developer access level. To create resources, we use Azure CLI. I also have an example of how we can do it using Azure Bicep. I will link in the description, link to my blog post about it. Then we will set up the CircleCI project and we will test the workflow. Let's create the Azure application. And right now, let's create the service principal. Let's go to our Azure. Let's refresh. And we can see it's created. Go to certificates and secrets. As you can see, currently we do not have anything set up in our federated credentials. So let's get back to our post. As you see, we have to fill all the fields, like federated credentials scenario, which will be other issuer. We need to fill in issuer field. We need to fill subject identifier field, the name, and also audience also. Here is the optional, but we need to change it for CircleCI. So it will be more convenient. Let's create the JSON file. We'll put all that information. First, we need to obtain organization ID from CircleCI. Let's go to CircleCI. Let's go to our organization settings. And here we'll obtain that information. Let's fill it. Right now, here's one more time. Right now, let's find the project ID, but it will be after we will set it up, and user ID. So user ID you can find here. Do not worry, I will delete that CircleCI account after the presentation. So this information will not leak out. And as the last step, we need to set up the CircleCI project. Go to projects, project settings, and here we can find the project ID. Let's add it to our file. Okay, our file is ready. We can continue. We have also to retrieve the object ID of our application. And right now we need to make a post request to the MS Graph. As you can see, here we need to provide the object ID, which we retrieve here, and also the body, which in our case, we put everything in the body.json file. Let's make a request right now. As you can see, as a response, we receive the information. Right now, let's go to Azure portal and see if the federated credentials were added. Okay, they are added, as we can see. Let's take a look. As you can see in the Azure, we have set the URL with the organization ID. In the subject identifier, we also have the organization ID, project ID, and also user ID. In the audience, we also added the organization ID. As the last step to test, we need to grant permissions to our service principal. We'll grant the reader role to our subscription, so our pipeline can check and read our account. You just need to fill here your subscription ID. After everything is set up in Azure, right now it's time to set up everything in CircleCI. We have to create the CircleCI config YAM. This is the example which I will use in this video. We'll have to add two parameters as environment variables. It will be Azure Service Principal ID and also Azure Tenant ID. Then we will log in using Service Principal. We'll then pass the parameters from the environment variables, and we will use federated token. As you can see, we also have to use the context, and since only then CircleCI will create this IDC token for us. So let's add the environment variables. First, let's retrieve the Azure Service Principal ID and tenant, and then add the variables. So let's go to the project settings, environment variables, and add variables. After we set up the Azure SP, and we just added the needed environment variables. Right now, let's add the context that we need. It can be just empty context. We don't have to put anything there. You can close that window and go back to our project. It seems everything is set up. Right now, let's test the CircleCI pipeline. To do that, let's push sample commit to our Git repository. Let's go back to CircleCI. As we can see, the job was triggered. Let's see how to proceed. As you can see, we managed to log in. In this video, we managed to authenticate CircleCI jobs with Azure using OpenID Connect identity tokens. As the last tip and warning before we finish, is you have to look out for this error. It takes time while this identity will propagate in Azure, and also you need to watch out what you add in the subject identifier field. It needs to be exact matched. You will receive the error in the output of the CircleCI job, so watch out for that. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. If you have any comments, leave them and I will be happy to answer.